this month, the whole theme for the entire month is Mother. And of course, there are many variations on that theme, many of which we will be focusing on next week. However, it's also Cinco de Mayo, and people of Mexican heritage are said to be the creators of that holiday celebrating their heritage. And the rest of us find an excuse to eat some good Mexican food. I thought today what I would do is borrow that concept of celebrating our heritage. And I took it a little step further and thought, now what does that have to do with Mom? Well, one of the questions that children sometimes ask at some point when they're growing up is, Mommy, where did I come from? You know, and the pat answer is from the Cabbage Patch, dear. Or maybe we'll talk about that later. But from a metaphysical standpoint, when we ask where we have come from, we get other answers. The truth is that we keep asking that question from the moment we're old enough to first put it into words, probably until we draw our last breath. There's something within us that really wants to know, that really suspects there's more than just my first birthday and my last one, and my first breath and my last one, and these chapters of experiences in between. That there's something more than that. And so we keep asking, and we keep looking into our heritage, because we want to know. We think there's more than just what appears to the naked eye. The word heritage means a few things, and among them, it means to consider one's background. It means to consider what one has either been given or somehow gotten and brought forward from that background. It means to consider what part of that we carry with us from that background. And it also is what has become part of us. So, of course, I'm paraphrasing a great deal, but we think of heritage as our background, as something that we got from it by whatever means. It is something that we now carry with us, and it is something that has become part of us. Right? Well, here's where it gets interesting. Because if we come back down to the personal level, and we say, where did I come from? And we look, perhaps for the first time, maybe as a young adult, taking our first class on self-help, reading our first book, asking it for the first time, maybe because we're at our first major turning point in our lives. We say, where did I come from? What is my background? What did I get from it? What am I carrying forward as a result of it? And what has become a part of me? We might say, you know, that's kind of a mixed bag. I like some of what I've seen, but not all of it. Sign up for another seminar, buy another book, go see another person about it. Keep journaling, keep going, keep asking, right? It may be that some of what we discover when we ask ourselves about our background, about what we've gotten from it, about what we're carrying forward, and what has become a part of us, we've discovered that there's a lot about all that that just doesn't match up. It doesn't feel right. There's something about it that feels heavy, like it's creating a drag, like it's not anything to do with what we dream about. The good news is, if we ask the same questions from a spiritual perspective, we'll get better answers. And they'll help us to understand the personal part. So we go there again. We say, okay, this time I'm putting my spiritual heritage on the drawing table. To the best of my understanding, at this point in my life, I've been inspired by a few people, in books, on television, in movies, here, there, and they sort of match that feeling I have in me that says there's more. So I'm going to ask again, to the best of my ability, and this is what we're doing this together, we say, what's my background as a spiritual being? Now, that doesn't mean what church or faith did I grow up in. What is my origin as a spiritual being? Okay. What have I gotten through my origin as a spiritual being? What am I carrying forward from my origin as a spiritual being? And what is a part of me as the result of my origin as a spiritual being? You get like the scalp tingling, I think I'm approaching truth here. Just thinking about it from that point of view. We stop and say, well, what might some of those answers be? Well, first of all, I think I like all of them, right? Second of all, not only do they have an appeal, and let me stop there for a moment, because think about it. Instead of saying, I was born to Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so in downtown whatever on such and such a street or rural route something or other in anywhere, USA. Instead of that kind of look at where we came from. The idea that there is a greater point of origin than just the entry point known as the beginning of our physical life is absolutely inspiring. And when we look at what we got from that, it's possible that we begin to discover and hear about this abundance of gifts that perhaps most of them are still unwrapped. And we look closer and we say, oh my gosh, they've all got my name on them. I didn't even know they were here. So there's a point of discovery that, wow, there's a relationship between me and this so-called divine inheritance. And we look further and we say, okay, so what am I carrying forward really? And we begin to discover that in addition to whatever baggage, whether it's a matching set or not, and maybe it has wheels and a handle, it's easier to drag along. Other than that stuff, there's something within us that is so special. It's already perfect. All-knowing, all-loving, ever-present, ever-perfect, eternal. It can never be taken away from, nor added to in any way. It would never even have that concept, that need to explore that idea, because it is wholeness. It is perfection. It is all of the qualities of spirit within each one of us. That's one of the things that we are carrying, despite all outward appearances. And we can't get rid of it. We just can't. Isn't that wonderful? We can't even escape it, because not only is it within us, but we are within it. We are within it because it's infinite. So no matter how far we go or how hard we might try, we can't disinherit that. And so what that means too about what is a part of us is that even despite what else we might still think or at least sometimes believe that's limiting, that's still there. So the same investigation from a spiritual perspective, instead of just what family did I grow up in and when is my appointment for more therapy about that today, which is very valid and quite important, by the way. But in addition to that is the opportunity to see a different past and a way different horizon as a result of looking at it from a spiritual perspective. It's when we put the two together that things really begin to hop. Because when we look at our lives and we say, I was born here and my life was like this, and I learned that there wasn't enough of that, And this was also in short supply, and I better really buckle down, because if I wanted to have any of this or that, I was really going to have to work hard. I might have to compete with other people. I might have to excel. I might have to do all kinds of things in order to have a little bit of that. And you compare that with what you discover by looking at the same things from a spiritual perspective. It's like taking a load off. It's like setting down some of that luggage. You say, oh, wow. There are many, many teachers who take us through these journeys of writing our spiritual autobiographies, of reframing where we came from. And they're doing the same thing. They're saying, if we look with new eyes, we realize it was all perfect. Not, this was my bad, my family of origin issues, because 85% of the families in this country are supposedly dysfunctional, so that's no excuse, right? Instead of looking at it that way as something broken that needs fixing, we look at even that through the eyes of our spiritual heritage, and we begin to be able to find meaning and purpose and value in everything, just as it was. And that's one of those things that is nobody else's business or work to do but yours. Nobody else's sense of timing or how it ought to be. It's just your opportunity. There. It's my opportunity for me and yours for you. So if we look at these things and we lay them out side by side, that spiritual perspective allows us to look at them in a new way. And many of us have already done this. If we're still on the planet, though, Abraham says this, there's a chance that we still have some growing to do. First of all, we're infinite. So for as long as we're here in form, we have our good and greater yet to be to experience. And then after that, well, we'll find out, won't we? But while we're here, that comparison allows us to find meaning and purpose in those things that we may have said, Mom, I just really don't know what to do about this one. And there's an interesting thing that happens when we shift our perspective about where we came from, about what all those situations and circumstances mean. Some of them that used to feel like handicaps, some of them that used to feel like wounds, some of them that used to feel like scars, some of them that used to feel like baggage, and whatever, holding us back, keeping us from who we could be. They turn out to be part of the very reason we are who we are today. There are two reasons, not just one, for celebrating our divine inheritance. One of them is so that we can claim it, so that we can be present for more of those gifts which are still there, unopened, with our names on them. And that's a wonderful thing. The other is that in doing that, something else happens. Something else happens. This is one of those dichotomies, one of those inexplicable things about how the universe works. That when I go over and I step up and I recognize my divine heritage and I see that those gifts have my name on them and I open them up, not only am I fulfilled, but I have become who I was meant to become, and I leave gifts in my path for other people to open. Each of us not only has our own personal fulfillment at stake, we actually have a legacy to leave that is part of someone else's gift ad infinitum. It's quite contrary to what some of our counselors may have said when we were in high school and the early days of college, selecting a career path. And yet now, that's sort of all the testing that they do to determine where your strengths are. That's where your gifts and talents are. That's where your unrealized dreams await. They're all there. I know Edwene Gaines is one of those people who talked about coming from early life circumstances of extreme adversity and contrast. And yet, she spun a reason for being and a life purpose out of that has been unstoppable. And that's what she goes around and teaches everyone else. So each one of us has some part of where we have come from that we still possibly have the opportunity to look at in another way. We probably all have at least one more gift to open. I dare to say maybe more than that. And we have gifts to give. So many teachers have said things like, don't put that bushel basket out, over your head. Don't hide your light. There's something in your own fulfillment that also gives to the rest of the world. I have one other funny aside, and that is when we're in the middle of this process and we're saying, okay, so I got what I thought, where I thought I came from, and I got over here all this inspiring stuff, and there's still a little bit of disparity here. I got this one area. Do you have one of those areas? This one area where you've got yearnings, you've got gift, you've got talent, but everything in life seems to tell you maybe later. And somehow it's just become a habit to have that be a maybe later thing. But something in you, whether it's a change in your economic or relationship status, or how much you're working, or where you live now, or who knows, something in you says, wait, I'm ready to take that off the shelf or the back burner and let it be first again. Those are the areas where there's a disparity between where you've come from that you know about and where you recognize you can be. And that's where you get to do your work. So one of the things that happens, even if you've taken lots of classes and done lots of workshops and tons of practice with your prayer partner or whatever, sometimes there's that piece that seems like it's just stuck at the bottom of the barrel, so to speak. I don't know if any of you have run across something like that, but I know several inventories and several processes later, I say, I got all this cool stuff cleaned up. I'm no longer this, I'm no longer that, I'm shining over here, I'm loving this. I got this one thing. I know it's not the truth of me, and somehow I don't know how to get it out of there. Well, there's a correlation or an analogy I wanted to share with you, and that is for those of you who cook. Have you ever gotten something so completely stuck to the pan that you consider throwing it out? Right? You got to go buy some sort of industrial strength jackhammer type thing, to get it clean. And how we think we have to work so hard because what we've done accidentally is create some sort of chemical bond, right? Now, think about it. Oh, this part of my thinking and feeling is permanently bound into my psyche and there's no way I'm ever going to get it out, right? That's what we're really talking about. But in the kitchen, it's that I seared this meat and I sprinkled in this seasoning and now I've created it used to be white porcelain, now it looks like cast iron, and I think I'm going to throw it away. The good news is that when we end up with something like that in our psyche, we don't have to scrub hard. We don't have to throw ourselves away. There are ways, just like there are in chemistry, to loosen those bonds and restore our psyche, which is our pot, to its original state. And it doesn't have to take a lot of effort. I love sometimes when I work with people throughout the week, they tell me old tricks I didn't know about. But this one I learned from somebody in the last 10 years or so. In the case of that pot, by the way, you put it on the stove on very low and put about 1/2 inch of water in there and a bunch of baking soda. And just let it bubble. And if there were a chemist in the room, we'd probably hear that the reason why is so-and-so, but the oxygenation and the heat and the slow bubbling will loosen those bonds between that ugly stuff and your beautiful pan. And then it'll be really easy to just scrub it lightly with a sponge and some soap and rinse it, and you're done. Okay. Well, we can do something similarly with our psyche. Because we don't have to say, you know what? I understand that spirit is magnificent. I understand that my origin is somewhere in it. But I got this thing. I was just made that way. That's just the way I am. I'm flawed. I'm different. I'm broken. I'm incomplete. No, you're not. That thing that might have been so much a part of you for so long that you've accepted it as a part of yourself. And now you're saying, wait just a minute. It can be loosened and dissolved and released to reveal the truth of you just that easily. Rick said a little bit about it. It's what we're doing on Tuesdays and Thursdays right now in classes. What many of us do every single morning or some part of our day. Meditation. Meditation. Maybe that's what that slow, warm temperature on the top of the stove is. Spiritual mind treatment. Affirmations. Mantras. Chanting. Could that be the baking soda? Maybe every bit of truth is like baking soda. Possibly the combination of reminding ourselves of the truth and sitting with it is all that is required to loosen that stuff and free it up without effort, so that what we find is our original condition. So I invite you to take that home with you today and really consider it, because you know, even the best of us with the greatest of intentions can sit down and say, okay, time to meditate, and forget why we're doing it. We can repeat a mantra or an affirmation and totally forget what it means to us. But if we can be truly present with it, even for a few minutes, on the top of our proverbial stove, we can restore ourselves to our original condition. And we can take forward those gifts. We can open them, we can get them, we can carry them, we can become them, and we can pass them on. And that's what it's all about.